Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Small Biz Talk with your host, Lori Williams. And a warm welcome to Sadie this morning. As I let everybody know, last week was Lauren's last week. She has gone on to new adventures. I'm so excited for Lauren. Sadie has been on the show before as a fill in for Lauren. So some of you are very familiar with her name. And I've worked with Sadie for many years now at the SBDC, and she is going to be my partner in crime and help me with the processes. So with no further ado, I'm going to say welcome, Sadie. And Sadie, would you go ahead and launch the slides and let everybody know who is the SBDC?
It is my pleasure, Lori, and thank you. I feel so loved and so welcome. I'm looking forward to all our adventures in the future. And so, a little bit about the SBDC. The SBDC is a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, helping to stimulate economic growth through business advising and development. We offer no cost services to the local business through funding provided by the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, and from the California Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, GoBiz. The Los Angeles Regional Small Business Development Center network serves small businesses throughout Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. We offer no-cost business advising, meaning you can meet one-on-one via phone or Zoom to address your specific needs and challenges. And we also offer virtual training, such as this comprehensive workshop to help and adapt and grow your business.
All right. Thank you so much, Sadie. So, with that, I am going to get started with the show today. I put some information into the chat for information to contact me if you have any questions or want to be a guest on the show or know anybody that would like to be a guest on the show. I also put some information in about the upcoming webinars, and I will be putting a few more bits in as we go along. Okay, so let's get started. So first of all, my session 2 and session 3 for my financial literacy is coming up in next week, I guess it is. Now, I'm having the legal structure for my company and the tax advantages in May, and June I'm bringing back online, should you be charging your customers sales tax? Many people think if you are sending or shipping outside of California, you do not have to charge sales tax. They also believe certain things like Shopify is taking care of the process for them, and it may not be true. So if you have any questions about sales tax, please jump in on this webinar. My upcoming shows next week, I've got Tracy from Smutchy. She has an online store selling many different products. She's going to tell us all about the trials and tribulations of an online store. May 22nd, we got Kay coming back on from STEMS. She has a catering company. She started to tell us the story and she had some technology issues. And so I'm asking her to come back on. We had great interaction in the audience and everybody wanted to know about ghost kitchens and how to, rent kitchens and all this with doing a catering as well as online and all the different information that she shares. So she's going to come back on and fill in those blanks we did not get to discuss. On May 29th, Ariel is going to come on. Her company is C12 AM. It's very fascinating. What it is selling women's footwear online. And Ariel started the company several years ago, and she's doing all the processes from getting the design to getting it manufactured, shipped overseas, and selling it online. Wealth of information, guys, wealth of information that she'll be able to share. Okay, now for my words of wisdom. So the first thing I got to say is, okay, guys, I drew this cute little drawing just now on my iPad, took a picture and stuck it in here. I thought a diagram is going to help me to communicate what I'm trying to communicate. So bear with me on my little child scribble, but I think I did a pretty good job of giving you something to look at. So here's my words of wisdom I want to talk about today. Everybody should ask themselves this question. If you are not making money, then how and when will you? I have all these people I talk to on a weekly basis, and they're like, well, I'm not making money, but I will then. And I'm like, when and how? So I want to talk to you and about cost structure and asset utilization. Now, in this, my words of wisdom are only to give you something to chew on. And if it rings with you, to get in touch with me or take one of my classes to learn more. I never go into depth on these because I don't, do that during the show, but it's just enough to give you a thought. So here's what the diagram's saying. Most of us are either distributors or we're offering services. When you're a distributor, every time you sell a product, you got to buy a new product. If you're a service, every time you offer the service, you got to buy a new hour of your time or someone else's. So there's no way your sales is going to create economies of scale like the old type of conveyor belt. You know, Lucy in the factory with eating the chocolates. If you're old enough, you know what I'm talking about. But you don't have a conveyor belt. We're not manufacturers. So every time our sales goes up, our cost to produce goes up the same amount. Right there, that section is our gross profit. So you cannot sell yourself into profitability because they're going up at the same time, like my arrows show here, right? Now, what can happen is you can end up where you have basically your asset utilization, your shop's underutilized, you've got room to grow. And what I mean is, if you're renting space, maybe you've got room for more customers to come in. If you have employees, they can work a little bit more customers in during the day. They're not working at full capacity. You know, if you are offering the services yourself, you've got a few more hours in the day that you could be actually doing the services if you had more customers. So what happens is your expense line, your overhead line, it kind of grows with you. And whenever it gets a bigger dip, this is where you get additional income, right? But if you are growing your sales, growing your cost, and it's the same, you got to get another employee to handle it, you got to get another person, you are not going to make any additional money. So where you're making money in today's business models that are not having economies of scale is really in the asset utilization here. And if it costs you a certain amount to deliver the services or the products, and that amount's going to increase, you don't have any additional income. You are going to be what I call more tired and more broke. Most people do not understand this basic concept, and they just believe or think or wish or hope that they're going to grow themselves into profitability, and they're simply not. The numbers will tell you this. And so one of the things I always say, you're going to be more tired and more broke, is my famous line. And my other famous line is, yeah, and can you buy a quart of milk with that? Because I can guarantee you cannot go to the grocery store, hope, wish, think, or believe at the cash register and get the quart of milk. So you really need to understand these fundamental business structures. And if you have any questions on this resonates, you say, hey, this is me, I can relate, please either take my finance classes or reach out to me for more information, because it breaks my little heart to see people who are just working, and they're not making money, and they won't be in the future, and they don't realize it, but I can see it immediately by looking at the numbers. So today I have a very special show. I have Eric coming back on the show. He's been a guest before. So let me first tell you a little bit about Eric. In 2020, after years of running a successful company in the apparel industry, Eric realized it was time for a change. He saw the difficulties that may lay ahead in the apparel industry and business in general. He also saw the opportunity to transition out of the hustle and bustle of city life and move into a more relaxed existence in Oregon. Eric, I am so excited. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks again for having me. Always a pleasure. So glad we reconnected after, I don't know, 2 years.
I know
Like is it?
we were talking about that. I kept thinking, I got to get in touch with Eric. I got to get in touch with Eric and see how he is. And then you reached out. Okay. So that was your official introduction. Now, Eric, I'm going to give the audience Lori's introduction about Eric. Okay. I'm going to talk about Eric like you're not sitting in the room, right? Guys, I can't remember the time, but it was right about the pandemic. I think, Eric, you first reached out to me through SBDC, and I find out, okay, this guy's got an apparel industry. He's doing something, he's got some questions about, finance, right? So as I'm looking and talking with Eric and I'm understanding, I'm like, whoa, he's got a whole enterprise going on. I first was like, oh, just some schmo who's selling a few. I'm like, oh no, Eric's got contacts in other countries. He's shipping, he's doing business with big corporations. I was like, he knows what he's doing, right? So I suddenly had this great respect. Okay, Eric really knows what he's doing. He's got quite an enterprise. And the other thing I noticed that gave me a lot of respect, Eric, is you knew whether you had more elaborate finance knowledge or not, you knew if you were making money, and you watched it like a hawk. You knew. So then we meet again, and I start getting Eric's talking about, I got this property in Joshua Tree, and I'm envisioning this building and all this, right? And I'm like going, wow, Eric's a dreamer who also is very grounded in finance and understanding the need to make money, but you're a dreamer and you have creativity and you're willing to take risks. So the next thing I hear, Eric goes, apparel industry, I can see it's not going to work. Been in it my whole life. It's going down. I'm going to go do this. I'm taking off. And I followed what you were doing. And once again, when you contacted me, Eric, you landed on your feet in this beautiful way where I see that the spirit of you that was creative has evolved even more. So there is my personal introduction to you, Eric, to our audience. And guys, you are in for a treat. So, Eric, walk us back. I want them to understand how involved you were in the apparel industry because you didn't just like give up something you just started. You were very involved. Tell us about it.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for that introduction. That was really sweet. And thank you so much. But yeah, the apparel business, I basically have been making clothes for more than 25 years. I started when I was fairly young and went through the whole process of working, important jobs with bigger brands. I started in bum equipment and went into textiles and I understood that there were limited opportunities for someone like me. So I started my own business, and from there, utilizing a lot of the connections that I've made overseas, and with my relationships with, then assistant buyers or people that were starting up just like me, and those people, eventually got into bigger positions, and kept those relationships for more than 20 years. And towards the end of my career, I was basically shipping, all at least in my eyes the distribution channels that were, from a financial standpoint, that was worth shipping. We have the value channel companies that are Ross, TJ Maxx. Obviously I weeded out all the dinosaurs in the industry. I didn't ship any other department stores anymore, just for the difficulties of sustaining that type of business. And the other thing that I did structurally on my side is to really cut down my overhead, and didn't have a warehouse. I just fulfilled, private label orders. I was a designer, lucky enough, and I'm a production guy. So I was able to do my own designs and run my production myself. So I basically was a one-man operation, shipping, Ross, TJ Maxx, and Tilly's, PacSun, Forever 21 once in a while. But even that, it was a nice setup, but I totally saw after the disruption of the pandemic that it was going to be a completely different world once we emerged out of it. And frankly, I did not have the heart to, fight. And, the chances at my age of, you know, fighting and losing and then having to restart again, that wasn't very appealing to me. So, my wife and I saw this opportunity to, maybe not make a ton of money, but on the opposite side, have a different type of lifestyle, and kind of start setting ourselves up for the next stage of our life. So, I mean, we made a change. That was 2 years ago. Sold everything, moved to Oregon, bought some land, bought some properties, and got a contractor's license. And here I am, 3 houses in.
I know, I know. So let's go back and unpack some of that. So first of all, I want to repeat something you said so the audience hears it. And this is the part that shocked me. Did you notice, audience, guys, everybody out there, he's talking Forever 21, Tilly's, all these big companies, but you were basically a one-man show.
Yep.
And that's what was so friggin' fascinating to me, because you had all these contacts in other countries. Every time I talked with you while you were in the apparel industry, you'd be flying off to this other country, making a bargain, a deal with this, and then communicating with all of these big buyers in these huge corporations and doing it all by yourself. A lot of our audience, they're trying to get to a certain size and then they think they got to add all these people. And you found that not to be so. So before we even go to where you are today, any words of wisdom you can share on how did you manage to get to that stage and still do a lot by yourself?
Okay, so what you mentioned early on made me kind of just smile, the asset utilization part of it, right? I looked at all my resources, and I had a choice, I think in 2017, 2018, or maybe it was a little bit later, maybe 2019. I was getting big orders, Ross. I mean, my stuff was selling at the stores, this kind of stuff. I specialize in bringing in the 12.99 shirts in value channel, and I was a print designer, so it's easy for me to react. Buyers would like, hey Eric, I need this, blah blah blah. Send me some 20 floral prints, and I'm And that's the other advantage being a one-man show. I have a dedicated staff, me servicing my clients, and in an hour I could get them something that would take maybe a couple of days from my competitors. So, business was good, but then, I was like, should I grow or should I just kind of enjoy this kind of nice soft spot? And one thing that I reflected upon, back in 2008, 2009, I was in a similar situation, but in a different situation. I was fully staffed, big warehouse, shipping, a good amount of product to all the stores, and also doing a lot of private label. But honestly, I was making more money by myself than having, quadruple the gross revenue and having salaries and, and the headache that I had to go through. Because it looked great from the outside, you're a 25 million or a 10 million or a, $5 million business. But at the end of the day, what really mattered to me was like, okay, how much time am I spending working? How much money am I bringing into my bank account? And how happy was I? That those are the kind of things that I evaluated and kind of decided just keep it status quo. I was making, comparing it to if I took a job somewhere else, I'd be making, if I were a salesperson, I could make, six figures easily, but I'd be working 24/7 and be completely stressed. But in my setup, I was probably working not as much because I've been doing it all my life. I know what I was, it's so easy for me to do what I was doing. And yeah, that's basically what it was. My suggestion always is, having a big business doesn't necessarily mean you're making big money,
No, it doesn't. And I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for saying this to the audience because I have been screaming this. Like I said, I see financials every day. And I just saw another set of financials where they're bragging about the revenue they got and they're making peanuts compared to what they would make. And they were making bigger money when they were doing it on their own. So that, I'm going to use an old word, paradigm shift. I'm hoping there's a paradigm shift in our entrepreneurs. And I'm trying to communicate this, that bigger is not better. And it's not how much revenue, it's how much net income. And I do think, Eric, there's a little bit of getting the ego out of it, right?
Oh
Because
yeah.
the ego loves to brag about the revenue. And then I go, yeah, can you buy a quart of milk? And they don't want to discuss that. So it's
Yeah.
really getting the ego out of it. Another fun story and funny for me, because, we were talking quite a bit during the pandemic. And I don't know how much you want to share on this, but what I was laughing about is I would be like, what are you doing now? Well, Erica, I'm in my truck and I came over here and I've driven here. Eric, can you just, I didn't want to say too much because I only want you to share with what you did, but that was hilarious to me. So while everybody was locked their, in their house, scared, what were you doing during the pandemic, Eric? Can you share
Oh
that?
my God. Now you're bringing me back to these crazy memories. This is the first time in my life. I mean, you know me, all entrepreneurs never stop working. It doesn't matter
Right,
what you do. I
right.
work when I'm sleeping and I'm making notes in my head. But this was the first time in my whole life that my factories were closed, my business were closed, all my buyers and all the retail stores were closed. So I did all the remodels that I needed to do in my house. Checked off every little list that my wife wanted me to accomplish. And I said, "Hey, our daughter's up in Seattle. She's by herself. I want to check on her. She needs some help. She was going to University of Washington at that time and living and working at a grocery store. She was an essential worker, so she was like, working. And we were worried about her. Just wanted to make sure as parents that she was doing okay. But then again, the ulterior motives kicked in. So I basically got my truck, by the way, set up with pretty much everything. There's solar panels and inverters and drawers and a bed, and I could basically be anywhere. It's insulated, so I spent a lot of time up in the mountains and 10-degree weather and snowboarded backcountry, whatever. So basically, what I did during that time is I was on the road. I surfed from Mexico through Central California, through Humboldt, and that's kind of like how I ended up here in Oregon. I was on this road trip on my way from LA to Seattle, and I cut across. I was in Ashland, I believe, and I was going to visit some friends who were, one of the people that I sponsored during my clothing business. They're a band out of Long Beach, Spirit Mother, so they were out in Burns. And I was like, hey, I got to check out, what Burns is all about. So I cut across on the 66 and ended up in this little campground called Topsy. And I, I mean, it was absolutely just beautiful when I looked
But
it
you
up
know
on,
I love Burns,
yeah,
Oregon. Love
yeah,
Burns,
I
Oregon.
know.
Yeah, I stay in Burns, Oregon all the time. I love Burns, Oregon. But so okay, we got to keep this because it's so friggin'
Yep,
hilarious.
sorry.
What is it like when Eric, with his long hair, goes into Burns, Oregon?
Just like going to the Woe Tavern down the street, I
Yep.
basically, I walked in there. So okay, but I'm gonna fast forward to, when after I decided it called my wife, hey, we're selling Joshua Tree. We're gonna try and figure out, there's opportunities in real estate in this town. We can get into properties under 200, at least at that time. And rent is this much, and on Airbnb, there's no Airbnbs here. There's really no houses that are the same aesthetic that I'd love to bring to the community. And there's a need for it because you got all this tourism around here. You got Crater Lake, you got lava beds. You have, I mean, the natural, beauty of the area. There's a lot of fly fishing. There's a Klamath River. So there's so much stuff that's untapped potential, at least in my view. So, sorry, I lost my train. So basically, I came back and just
How
got,
did your wife react when you said, honey, we're
oh,
selling everything, we're moving to this remote place? How did your wife react?
no, she was upset. I mean, she was, what the hell are you doing? Are you crazy? Basically, that's her reaction was. No, but so obviously she came up and checked it out, and and I told her the reasons, and obviously there's the emotional reasons, and there's how it looks on paper, and what the goals are in the next 5 years, and how we were going to accomplish it, and and then the good thing about me and my wife is, okay, so if we don't do this, what do you want to do? We just kind of go back and forth, and she's just like, you seem to have made up your mind. So, I mean, let's go. I mean, and so she decided to do it. I kind of had to lie to her because we have a Walmart here. We have a Home Depot. We have a grocery outlet. And I said, oh, yeah, there's a Trader Joe's and a Target nearby. And she was like, okay, fine, as long as there's a Trader Joe's and Target. But the nearest
How
Trader Joe's
far
in
is nearby?
an hour and a half.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know there is no Trader Joe's nearby. Well, nearby is relative, right?
Yes, yes, 100%. So that's out in Medford. So it's in the wintertime, it's hard to get over there because of all the weather. There's a lot of snow, and so, but yeah, long story short, we ended up just packing everything and moving here.
And so, guys in the audience, can you imagine, as Eric said, well, it's hard to get there because of the snow. And yeah, it's about an hour. You can picture. Okay. So, what I want to do, Sadie, if you could jump in right now and share your screen, because what I want to do is I want to give the audience a visual. When we talk about, and we're going to back into this, but when we talk about the properties that Eric did develop and have now as an Airbnb, I want to show you how beautiful these are, guys. Do the show all pictures, Sadie. So as he's talking about, yes, we bought this property, I built these, and now I got it as an Airbnb. He just sent me these pictures. I hadn't seen it, and I went, oh my God, you built this, Eric. You created this. Because, guys, when he first got up there, he sent me the link to Zillow or whatever it was to show me the land. It was just forest. And he's like, I'm going to build this property and I'm going to get a construction license and I'm going to have an Airbnb. I'm like, Eric, I know you're going to because I know you. But guys, look at what he created. So you've got some contents. Thank you so much, Sadie, for showing that, because now you guys have a feel for what we're talking about. So Eric, now you got your wife in on it. You move up there. You're on land. You tell us what you did, where you lived, how you bought the property, and what you did physically with this property from there. And then I want to get in after that to the community aspect. I want to pick up the community
Yeah.
aspect as well.
All right. So basically, what I did when I looked at the town, research rents, and like I said, short-term rental opportunities. Um, and it looked like it would check out. So I came here. I really don't have any experience being a contractor or flipping houses aside from me building my own houses. So a lot of that, by the way, that's one of the things I want to point out. Be very, very conscious of when you're getting into these financial parts of real estate and stuff like that. I learned a lot just by doing it. It could have gone very, very wrong if I didn't. I mean, still pretty bad right now. Not bad, but I could have done a lot better had I known going into this whole thing. But I mean, I'm learning. But yeah, so basically, I looked at three proofs of concepts. One was a property that was, obviously I wouldn't be able to live in. It was bad condition. It was a complete to the studs remodel. The other property was a house that was, it's good enough. It's not my aesthetic, but it's cleanish. It's very outdated and it needed a full remodel. And then I also bought the land, bare land from out here in this town called Kino in the woods, right? Um, so basically I started, we lived in the house that I was going to remodel and started, that was the first project, doing the planning and, started remodeling. And while I was remodeling the place, I realized a few things about small towns and rural America in general. The pace of work and the diligence in getting things done is a lot different mentality that I'm used to coming from Long Beach, right? If I want to do a remodel, I want to be in and out 6 weeks. Boom, you work as much as you can. Here's your big bag of money. You work for, you're proud of what you do. But it was difficult to find that kind of stuff here. So I tried hiring a contractor. It didn't work. I tried, hiring my own people, didn't work. And then at the end of the day, I was like, out of frustration, my wife's like, why don't you call, Jaime, our Gabrielle and him, and this guy's super experienced in developing, he's a contractor from LA, and he's been doing it for as much as I've been in the clothing business, like in 25 years. And so basically we hatched this idea of like, hey, bring Jaime up here, bring a couple of guys, and between one guy who knows electrical and plumbing and Jaime and me who can do pretty much, all the other stuff, and I do finish work and I'm learning too. We basically just did the house and finished it in like 8 weeks after, dicking around for like, sorry, pardon my French, but dicking around for 6 months. We finished this property in six, and then once I figured that out, like, oh, okay, so this is what I need to do. So after we finished this, winter came, went back to the crew went back to LA, and then I brought them back to start working on the next house. And yeah, and then the next house is basically, I started doing the build from scratch. So this is bare land that I developed from plans that I had ideas on for, I don't know, more than 15 years ago. This is a Scandinavian structure that, I've always dreamt of building. So basically, I learned, I do have a background in engineering. That's what I went to school for, but one way or another, I never practiced. So I know how to do drafting. I know I can calculate structural, stuff. So without having an architect, I was able to bring this to a pole barn builder out in Oregon. And I ordered the kit and it came with the structural, which I brought to the city, and the city stamped it. And by the way, here's another fun fact about building in rural Oregon versus building in Joshua Tree. $45,000 in permits in Joshua Tree before you can even start building a container home. A container home, which is a box that you won't do anything. So I have to do seismic. So 45,000 versus I spent $5,500 on a 1,700 square foot home here in Oregon. Inspections in California during that time was about 6 to 8 weeks backlog. Here, they show up the next day and we hang out and we drink coffee and we talk about what I was doing, And it's just been so much easier just working. I figured if I did what I did here in California, I'd still be building right now. I moved here 2020, so I've done almost 3 houses since I've moved here. So that's just
Incredible.
a big, yeah.
So, it's such an interesting thing, especially for everybody that's in California right now. And really, we could talk about California or Oregon, or we could talk about cities versus small rural areas. And we're hearing so much about people wanting to go to rural areas. And you're absolutely correct. It's different in many ways. And to those who know my background, I grew up in rural. I thought I was in the country, but as I got older, I realized I was podunk. I wasn't even country, right? And, everybody, and it's so funny, Eric, I have to say this, when I was growing up, and I know everybody in the audience is going to laugh at what I'm about to say, but this is so true. I thought everybody built their own house, Eric. I didn't know there was such a thing as a home builder because in my
Yeah.
experience, everybody, what happened is when somebody got married, the whole neighborhood, they chipped in and they helped, and somebody had an expertise and they got designs and they built their house. And when I was, a teenager, I was over with my brother cutting down trees and planing the wood and helping him to build the house. So it wasn't until I got older I realized that everybody didn't buy their house, right? So in rural America, you don't have access to the resources. I spend most of my time right now in very rural America and I love it, but I don't have access to resources. I got to drive maybe an hour to the grocery store or 30 minutes to the grocery store, and it's a trade-off. So if you were to just talk about city life versus rural, you talked about resources. What has this change done to you, the person, Eric? I know we talked about the business, but I would love to get what's Eric like today that he maybe wouldn't be if he didn't have this experience.
You know what? I believe in energy. I'm in the trees every day. I drive and I've basically eliminated probably 70% of all the stress I surround myself. I've exchanged it with a lot of the different stuff I've taken on in this new life. But just the simple fact of driving in traffic. I remember, going 10 miles and spending an hour and a half and just being, completely stressed out. And now, once I go into town, you do what you do, and then you start driving back and you see that, oh, everything opens up. Here's all the fields, and you can see where the mountain that you're going to go into. And just to give you a perspective, Klamath Falls is about 20 minutes from where I live currently, which is this little town outside of Klamath Falls called Kino. Klamath Falls is about the city proper is about 25,000 people, and if you include all the surrounding areas, you're looking at about 45,000 people. So it's not a small town. And there's pretty much everything you need. But you know, going back to where I live, which is a small town like 20 minutes away with 1,000 people, I mean, it's a complete change in perspective. I mean, you would drive 2 hours to go to Big Bear or in the mountains or wherever you want to hike, from Long Beach to be able to access, the nature that you want. Up here, I'm butted up against Hammaker Mountain Road, and I basically walk up and I'm there. It's trees, it's mountains, and it's yesterday I just found a bunch of morel mushrooms, and cooked. It's pretty crazy. It just but like you said too, it's a trade-off. One of the big problems I have is I am a surfer. I'm about 4 hours away from the ocean, so that's slowly really killing my soul. But that actually is another good thing because it's forcing me to travel. From here, if I needed to go, go surf, I could drive to the coast, which is, like I said, 4 hours away, or get to Medford and buy a plane ticket to Cabo San Lucas for $250, and you're there in an hour or 2 hours. So it's a big give or take. Like when I was in Long Beach, I was able to surf every day. Here it's more like a challenge, but the other part of it's like I can go fishing. There's some of the best fishing that's down the street, and there's like mountain biking trails, and it's basically just a complete shift from living in the city and just being overwhelmed with all the opportunities in nature that you can have.
Yeah, one of my favorite sayings is happiness is not perfect, right? And what I have noted from having the flexibility to change my life as well is that I venture into these new areas, I gain and I lose. It's part of life. I think it's about understanding what makes you happy and gravitating and taking the risk. That's a very educated risk, which you did. And speaking of that, let's now go back. The properties, they're now Airbnb. You have people renting. How is it turning out financially for you? Are you starting to see your financial dreams actualized? And also, Eric, one of the things I like to express to people is even if you're not making the same revenue, when you change your overhead expenses, it's discretionary income that buys happiness and a quart of milk. So, any
Yeah.
comments on that,
All
please?
right. So On the discretionary income and the cost of living difference, I look at friends still, I have still friends in LA, Portland, Seattle, everywhere in the city. And they come visit and they just enjoy, the time that they have. And it's like when they come here, they realize, oh, now I get it. This is why you moved there. The fundamental difference of gas being $4.50 here and $8 in LA, or just going to the grocery store and trying to get, just the basic necessities. Same stuff, same grocery chain here versus Portland. You're paying $2 more just in general for anything. So there is that to be said about, my reduced income doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not living the same lifestyle, because it's so much cheaper to do anything here. I mean, plus you kind of are forced to also conserve the resources, your financial resources. There's no restaurants here, so I'm not gonna go out
Right.
and spend like $500 a night, on a beautiful omakase sushi dinner. You reserve that for special occasions. That's that. And by the way, that's about an hour away, or an hour 20 minutes away, over the hill, over to Ashland. So there is, access to those things that I do miss, which is food, culture, and all that good stuff. But just in general, it's like the reduced revenue, like you said, doesn't really necessarily mean that you're not living the same lifestyle that you used to. I still have, there's no shopping, which is
Right.
okay with me too. But that's part of the commitment I had, having spent all my life creating stuff that just ends up in the landfill. I wanted to, that's part of the core values that I wanted to pursue, just to live a little simpler, not to consume, as much as I used to, and to try to support and buy, local as much as I can. And that's one of the other benefits of living where I live. We have access to some of the best, food, naturally sourced food that you can ever get. I mean, it's kind of mind boggling that you can go to and buy something. We have this co-op called Klamath Grown, and basically we source from all the local farms and meat producers. And none of the stuff that I've been eating is more than, I don't know, 10 miles away from where we are, maybe 50, 100 miles at the most. But access to that kind of sustenance, and I think it does, gives gives you a different perspective on how we are supposed to live.
Yes, it does. I mean, that was where, I grew up, where once again, where I grew up, this grocery store was far away, but we bought our eggs from the local farm. Our meat Norby would butcher a cow, and that's where our meat would come from. And we grew our own groceries, basically. So I was so familiar with that type of lifestyle. And I think you're so correct, is that your discretionary income doesn't go on the same things. Now, I'm not putting the city down. There's those people that absolutely love the city and would be miserable
Oh,
in the kind of
absolutely.
places we are. But what I am saying is to understand that there is a give and take, and that's what, Eric, you're kind of explaining to everybody, and I'm supporting in this, that happiness is not perfect, and as long as you have an awareness, I'm getting this, but I'm giving up this. Well, what do I want? Do I want this or this? And then going after it and creating a plan, and that's where I think being fully engaged with life comes into play. So as we now look at the properties, you're technically being an Airbnb, just like
Yep.
many are being in LA, and you've got a location that I'm assuming you don't have as many people driving by and saying, where am I going to stay tonight? Let's see, the Motel 6 is booked, right? So from a marketing perspective, Eric, you've got to kind of get people more into the
Yep.
area. I'm assuming a lot here, but I'm thinking there's a lot of wisdom that you had from the apparel industry that you're now having to utilize. Plus, you're having to engage in more, because you're having to do more marketing to get people to engage in something that they maybe wouldn't consider, where you were fulfilling orders before, if I could say it that way. Words of wisdom and thoughts on that.
Okay, so I forgot to go back on I'm going back on the profitability and how
Please
the
do.
business is going. So basically, when I was researching the area, your entry into the market here in Klamath Falls is a lot lower than, let's say, buying $1 million property in Southern California, right? And then if you research the rents or the nightly rates that you're going to be able to generate, it's not going to vary percentage wise. It's going to be, the spread is so much bigger. Like I could rent my properties for $230 a night, And in LA, really depending on what property you're renting out, it'll be probably fall into that same range. But guess what? You spend $1 million or more on your house, and you're renting it for almost the same price. So like I said, it's significantly, the market entry is a lot significantly lower. And that's kind of like what I'm banking on. And as far as, appreciation of the property values, I mean, that's a crapshoot anywhere you go. And that's where I think what you were touching on is where I kind of took what I was kind of good at with the apparel business, which is marketing. I'm a marketing guy. So if there's anything that I could do to improve the community or get eyes on the community to bring more people here, and so that's basically what I'm doing. And the funny thing is that that's kind of led me to this new life of being super involved in Klamath Falls, in the community. I actually got a job, one way or another. I am working part-time. So I'm working for Healthy Klamath, which is back then was called the Blue Zones Project. So basically Blue Zones is the study of communities where health and longevity and all that stuff. I mean, you guys can look it up. But Klamath Falls is now a certified Blue Zones community through the efforts of Healthy Klamath. So I work for that entity, and I do community engagement, and my focus has always been, you know me, arts and culture, because I firmly believe that all the economic development that everyone is trying to develop the community without an anchor in the creative community, a lot of it is not as I shouldn't say not meaningful, but it creates a bigger anchor for the community to have pride. We're talking about built environment, you're talking about gallery shows, you're talking about better food, engaging better music. So I mean, these are the things that makes me want to live in that community. So that's what I'm trying to do to help develop those opportunities for those types of things in Klamath Falls.
And in that, so when we go back to, let's go back, one other thing is, as you talked about, the rents may be comparable, the entry is less. How about the demand? I'm assuming that when you're in a more populated area in LA, you're going to have people in the B&B renting it more often than you will out in where you're at. So you may have less rental time on the Airbnb, and that's where marketing comes into play. Or what did I say, right, wrong, or indifferent?
No, so that's one of the things that I researched before I moved here. First of all, short-term rentals was only one of the considerations. I was also considering long-term rentals, so developing these properties to get to rent. So that's the first analysis. The demand for rental properties here is staggering. We cannot provide enough rental properties to satisfy the demand for the community, because we have a hospital here, which is Sky Lakes. We have an Air Force base, Kingsley Field. There's various industries that are, there's agriculture, and there's a local community that I shouldn't say just rental properties. I think affordable rental properties. So there is a demand. So that's one of the things that made us decide to consider this area. There's a demand and there's a potential for growth. Researching the potential economy, there's a new maintenance. I think there's a new plane that's going to be stationed here in one of the bases, which will bring another 200 military families into town. So that would also provide another impact in the demand for rental properties in the area. There's also the Swan Lake project, which is it's like a power generation project that also will require housing for the people who are going to be working on that. So all these little things that I've kind of saw happening in the horizon kind of made me feel a little more comfortable knowing that there's going to be some kind of demand. And my me, my perspective has always been like, am I going to compete in the bottom of the barrel, cheap, just get it out there so I can rent it out fast, and it's always going to be rented because cheap. I mean, I kind of went after the higher middle range area, the nicer property that people are going to spend a little bit more of money. So, and it accomplishes a couple of things. First of all, I was able to live in it while I was fixing it up because that's what I was used to. And the other part of it is like, okay, I can demand a little bit higher rent and so I decide that. And if I go Airbnb, it's really going to separate my property from all the other properties that are just trying to get a cheap room or just turn occupancy. So, and that's kind of like it is, we went live in March, and so far, on average, this is our second month, and average rent, our average rates is a little bit higher, or actually a lot higher than most, and we're batting at about 65% occupancy so far as I
That's
look.
huge. That's huge.
And
And it's
then,
not even summertime in that area, which is more when it's
yeah,
populated.
that was winter time. That was winter time. I
Right.
haven't even gotten to the summer seasons, and like I said, just being more aware of your guests, and again, it's just marketing. Trying to get that 5 star, and then not trying to get it by tricking people and giving by actually providing them the amenities that'll make them happy, that they say that, yeah, I've had this guy that stayed with us 3 times already. He works on construction projects here in Klamath Falls, but every time he's here, if our place is available, he'll just book it for three
I know I
for
read
three
some of
point.
your reviews, and they were not just your average reviews. They talked about the beauty and the experience of being in the
Yeah.
place, which really gives you a feeling when you're reading the review.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so that's the other thing that I'm doing with the property. So I filled it with, kind of like my art collection, and I'm putting local artists work in the property, and I have a wall almost like a retail area in the house with a QR code. Here are local artists, blah blah blah, and then there's a little bio. If you want to buy this piece, here's a QR code. Take it and send money to the artist. It's kind of
See,
like
this is what I love about you, Eric.
experience.
It's like you don't just take an opportunity, it's like, the Russian dolls. I don't know what they're called, but you open it and there's
The
another doll,
nesting.
another doll. Right? I don't know what they're called, but that's how you are. You take an opportunity, then you find an opportunity within an opportunity, then you find an opportunity within an opportunity. And there's always this underlying aspect of how can I also help another person? How can I help somebody sell their artwork? How can I help them?
Yep.
You just have this way that you, Eric, operate that is very conscious of the money that needs to be made, looking at opportunity, and then looking at opportunity within an opportunity. Okay, I know this is the hardest thing when we're asked to describe something about ourselves, but if there was certain characteristic traits or ethics or whatever word, I don't want to make a word, Eric, about yourself that you would say, hey guys, this is what it is that lets me do this. What would you say that we could take away from, Eric? What is it about you that allows you to be like this? Because I've seen it year over year with you.
I don't know, because probably this is my wife tells me I don't think before I go, I just go.
I think you
And
think of it. Yeah, but you
well,
do
but
go.
no,
No.
I think on the fly, and then when I'm there, I'm just like, oh shit, and then I just try to make it happen. So knock on wood. No, honestly, okay. For me, it's always looking at the positive in anything. I look at Klamath Falls. Everyone might look at this town and say, "Hey, this is a meth-ridden, backwards, rural community, blah blah blah." And I look at like, whoa, I could, bring art shows here. I could bring brands. I could, be involved in the community and help with making, remodeling houses and making our town, a much better place. Not just for myself, but just in general. You look at kids. For me, at the end of the day, getting involved in educating kids about opportunities and careers in the arts. To me, that's always been my thing. I've had interns and mentored kids through careers, and I'm continuing to do that. I volunteer at the local. I'm on the board of directors at the Klamath Art Association and Gallery, trying to bring new life to that organization. I volunteer at the just talking at high schools and just showing them what basically I tell them I drew pictures my whole life and ran a business and put 2 kids through college, and don't think that you have to be a doctor, engineer, nurse, accountant to be a contributing member to society. We need art and people who are creative to, and it's just as important part of our economy as all those other things. So I try to do that. I'm at the Digital Media Advisory Board at Klamath Community College, is to kind of help kids, review their portfolios and try to get them ready for, higher education, or try to get jobs. I don't care if you're a graphic designer, filmmaker, or, social media person, whatever. So I just try to do anything that I can to, promote the arts and culture. And I also am involved in the built environment side of things, which actually is one of my biggest passions. One of the things that anchors economic development in the community is the arts and culture in the community. If you have murals, if you have, walkable spaces, bike paths, and, all these different things that make your city more, you know, easier to live in and more, more vibrant downtown. I volunteer with the Downtown Association as well. I mean, that only just brings more value to all that we do in the community. So
You know what I love that's so beautiful? A couple things on it. I'm going to start with one, then I'm going to say with the other. But within the community, first you move into this community, and small rural towns know when somebody new even goes through their town, right? I'm always very respectful in the small towns because as I'm going through them, I have to remember that this is their home and I'm a foreigner, right? But you went from being a foreigner to being such an integral part of the community. And like you said, it's really also become a marketing strategy where people are referring your place. So I think it's beautiful what you brought to that community. And also, I think, and it's hard to put words on it, and maybe you guys in the audience can relate to what I'm saying. But Eric, you really are an example where you're following your passion, you're doing what you love, you're doing what you enjoy. And like your wife said, maybe you're moving quickly and thinking it on the fly, but at the same time, you are thinking it through, you are analyzing it, and you're making sure the dollars add up. You've got this really beautiful combination that works between passion and economic financial feasibility of your ideas. And I think you just keep trying and trying until you make it work. And it's a perfect example of that. And before you go, I want to make sure you also say, before you comment on that, everybody's asking, where is this? And I
okay.
can't, I don't know how you spell Keno. Is it Ki? How do you
No,
spell
no,
where?
it's
I want to
K.
put it
Keno, Oregon, Keno. So the main town
in.
where I am is Klamath Falls, Oregon. So
Okay,
it's in Klamath County. It's in Southern Oregon, just 10 minutes from Siskiyou County, California. So you're across the border. And
perfect, perfect.
it's a city of sunshine. It's basically sunnier. It's sunny here. It's a high desert, so it's not the doom and gloom of the Pacific Northwest. We have snow, but if you can see outside, it's the sun is shining, but it's like, what is it, 38 degrees right now.
Yeah, and so I want you to go into what I comment on, but before I want to make sure I don't forget. So guys, you want to go into the mountains, you want to put your feet on the ground, you want to bring some peace, you want to get reconnected, you want to get creative. You click on the Instagram and rent one of Eric's properties for the weekend and get out of town and see what it's like. And then you also I get offer this. You can also meet Eric and have a conversation with him and get to share some of his energy. But Eric, going back to that combination that I feel that you inherently have of being passionate as well as financially feasible, do you think of yourself that way?
See, I love that you went back to that because I try. At the end of the day, as a creative and as an entrepreneur, especially in new projects like this. I mean, in the clothing business, I know my margins while I know my cost sheets. I know how much I'm going to sell and how much I'm going to produce this garment before I even make it. I've been doing it so freaking long. I could, look at a shirt and then I can make, I can make it for $4 if I needed to and sell it to Nordstrom for $58, right? When I got into the real estate business in general, I had no tools. I mean, I was winging it from the beginning, and my chart of accounts are different. My profit centers are completely different. I don't know how to track my time and my profitable or not. So that was one of the things that I wanted to point out. I kind of got veered on just because out of necessity, because I had to work so hard on building these properties. I maybe did not pay as much attention I should have in managing the financial aspect of it, being so strict as possible in our budgets, being, do I buy this $50 toilet versus the $12 toilet? It's just as important to be as cognizant with your numbers and sticking to your budgets and knowing that, because here's the opposite side of it. In the apparel industry, I know I had to sell a shirt for MSRP $12.99. I'd put it on. I'd wholesale it for $6.50. I'd produce it for $3.50 to $4.75. Whatever margins I can average out of the year, I'll walk away with a good profit. Year in, year out. When I got into the real estate business, there's all these other aspects that I did not, I wasn't aware of, just lack of experience. Okay, if I spent X amount of money on a 1,000 square foot property, that puts me in this price range, dollar per square foot, and let's say it's 1,000 square foot, you're $100,000. If the market is below that, you're basically you're losing money.
Right. You didn't even do anything yet, and you're losing
yeah,
money by that
you're
first
losing money.
point.
It doesn't matter if you can rent it out for $5,000 a month, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, you want to be able to, if you had to get out of your properties, you have to be profitable. And then if you sell it, you have commissions, you have this and that. So it took me a while to get kind of a handle of it. So now I'm playing a little bit of catch up. Knock on wood, I'm still okay. But in hindsight, man, I could have done so much better if I did this. So that's for the future. And the other part of living in the rural community too, I didn't have the same access I had to people like you. My CPA was in LA. My bookkeepers were in LA. So by the time I was like trying to get back into my books and trying to do, because for me, like you've always taught me, now and analyzing your numbers and comparing what to what you feel is an important part of kind of assessing your business and where you are on a regular basis. And since the move, I wasn't, the foundation of the business was not there yet, and I'm kind of like playing catch up, and that's what I'm doing right now. So once everything is back to numbers, so there's a completely different set of numbers that I had to consider doing what I do. There's
Yeah. But isn't and as you're speaking, yeah, if I knew in hindsight, but isn't that also the beauty of being not only an entrepreneur, but a human being? I
oh yeah,
just turned 60. Man, if I knew when I was 20 what I knew now, oh my friggin' God. But then I look back and go, but look at the experiences. What a grand adventure. But I had enough cushion in all different situations that I didn't fall flat on my feet. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And so that's the same thing. Yeah, maybe it didn't turn out as it would have if you knew what you knew, but you didn't know it. And the fact is, you took a chance. The other thing I picked up on what you were saying that I found real interesting is as you were speaking about the demand and the future demand, and you were speaking about the economic things that are going to happen in the area, the military families, the hospitals here, it made me realize that your concept wouldn't have just happened in any small town. I've been in some
yeah,
small towns there because I stay in them all the time. There's going to be no growth in these towns for 30, 40 years. And I like that. And so does the resident like that. But that's not where you set up a new higher dollar space. So you really, if you want to do this, you have to do the research to see where is the demand coming from, independent of what you're doing.
yes, 100%. And then it's like you said, not all small towns are built the same. So
Right.
you have to check out what the opportunities are and what the potential for growth, because it could easily turn um, without even knowing it. Even just looking at our community, this town used to be anchored in the logging industry. When logging industry went away, it left a big hole. Right now, if you're looking at what the big industries are here, we still have Geldwen here. There's Sky Lakes Medical Center. There's the tribes, and there's the base. And there's, like I said, a smattering of small to medium-sized businesses that are keeping the economy up. And one of the things that I now that I'm involved in public health and nonprofits, one of the things that I saw, which was not a red flag, but also it was not only a red flag, but it's also an opportunity, right? There's a lot of organizations and businesses that exist because of grant funding, and
Yeah.
grant funding is great, because it gets people going, it helps the community, this and that. But on an economic level, it's something to look into also. It's like, what if the economy turns and those funds aren't available to trickle down into these places? Are these businesses going to be going to be surviving if those funds are not there? So I'm trying to take that equation into and say, hey, are we going to be okay if we go into another economic downturn?
Right.
Well, how do I position myself, if that happens, kind of thing. So because
And
that
that's
affects
one of
everything.
the things I always notice about you too, Eric. And I'm the same way. I'm thinking 10 feet down the road. What if this happens? What if this happens? And what I'm going to do. But, this is a beautiful story about kind of, looking at what's happening, choosing personally what you want and what you don't want, identifying from a opportunity, the feasibility, taking a chance, making some mistakes, staying grounded, seeing what you can do to service others, and in that bring things back to yourself, and looking up one day and finding yourself from Long Beach into the woods in a whole new world and a whole new experience, and re-energized about life and what tomorrow can bring. That's my summary. Let's hear your summary, Eric.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, it was definitely, we were going to do this anyway. So this is part of the transition from, raising a family, running a business, being a career. And then now that my wife and I are a little bit older, we're trying to set ourselves up. We know that our retirement funds aren't going to be 100% there to sustain our lifestyle, Social Security, this and that.
Right.
Business, I don't want to work that hard anymore. So it's kind of like a hybrid of what I picture our retirement is going to be, because I'm not going to stop working. I'm always going to be working. Always going to be bringing money in, and it's just it's the consciousness of what do I spend my time on, and how much time do I spend does it bring me joy? Does it, all that good stuff. But on the major plan of things, Klamath Falls is a stepping stone into the next step of what we're trying to do, because we want to be, able to also do the same thing that I'm doing here in other places. I'm trying to make my way closer to the beach as I go. Could it be the coast of Oregon? Could it be Mexico? Could it be the Philippines? So it's in a sense, what I did here is a proof of concept of what I can take and package and take to a different place. It's basically the same thing as what I used to do in the clothing business. Okay, here's a style, or here's a trend that I want to invest my time and my energies and marketing into. If it clicks, boom, I take it anywhere, and it's going to work. And it's the same thing here. If I buy a property in another town and did the same things that I did, and I'm talking about how do I manage the construction? How do I manage the marketing? How do I structure the rental? Is it long-term rental, short-term rental, combination of both? How do I involve myself in the community so I can bring more value to the properties that I develop, and what grants and what opportunities are there economically in the community and the city, the county, that I can avail of to help improve my properties and the community while I'm doing it. So I'm still learning, but it's
Summary. But no, that's a beautiful summary. And I have no doubt that when I talk with you again, you'll be recreating your model with a better understanding in some other area. Now, Eric, we got in the chat your Instagram to see the property. Any other information that we want to give to the audience on how to get in touch with you or anything, feel free to put an email address or anything in the chat in case anybody wants to talk with you or get involved in any opportunities, because
yeah.
Eric got it going on. So feel free to put any thing you want in the chat for our audience to know how to get in touch with you.
No, I
And
think all my Instagram is in there. That's pretty much
it is.
how
That's
I'm
it. They
most
get in
active.
touch with you there. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that you had the opportunity to communicate and the audience had the opportunity to communicate with you. So, Eric, I just want to say thank you so much. I think what COVID had many bad things that happened. That's a given. But in my personal opinion, I think it really allowed many people to stop what they were doing by force, but stop what they were doing and look around and say, maybe the question is, what brings me joy? Where do I want to be? What do I want to experience? And not so much about, let me just do the hustle and bustle of constantly working with my head down and not even considering or thinking that there may be something else I want to do. So I think that's just a beautiful story. So I thank you so much for coming on and sharing. We got somebody saying, do you ever mentor for the clothing industry?
Yes, always.
I knew your answer was that.
Yes.
I have to say this to you, Tanya. I now feel as though I can call Eric a friend. I've been in
Yes.
contact with him so much, and Eric is such a loving soul that always is open to mentoring and helping others, as you can see with his community involvement. So I can tell you that that's a given. So I want to get Sadie back on and say, Sadie, thank you so much for being here in place of Lauren and being our regular. And Sadie, wasn't that a fascinating story?
I mean, as like I say, as always, you have the best show, you have the best guests. I always learn so much. I mean, for this one, I have to say, you know what? Life is not dull. Life has many incarnations.
No, it is not. In fact, one of my other famous sayings that people laugh at me all the time, and I've said it for years, I always say there's magic fairy dust in my life, and I just go, and I let the magic and I got that from that old cartoon where he made the reindeers fly, and he threw out the magic fairy dust. As a kid, I was just like, I want magic fairy dust. So I think if you believe in magic fairy dust and you take intelligent actions towards it, life is magical. I really do think it's magical. So with that, I want to say thank you so much in the audience for coming and joining our show and listening to Eric's fascinating story. Eric, I'm going to be in touch with you. I'm going to have you back on because I know this story is going to go. And I think it's a great conversation to have where we are always being reminded that we have the power to create our financial destinies. We have the power to make our life magical, as Sadie says. We really do. We just got to take the actions and do them intelligently and do the research. And, I always say that, success is really a mixture of action and intelligence. It's combining the two. And Eric, you are just such a beautiful example of being a passionate living soul while still understanding you got to have enough money to buy a quart of milk.
Thank you.
So with that, I am going to say thank you once again to everybody that's been on the show. And as you can see, I am putting my information directly into the chat, which I'm going to do right now. And anybody who wants to get in touch with me, here's how you get in touch with me. You can contact me directly if you want to be a guest on the show. Somebody wants to be a guest. You have an idea of what you would like covered on the show, or you want to have a one-on-one, just reach out to me. And with that, Sadie, once again, thank you. And Eric, thank you for being the guest. And I will see everybody next week on Small Biz Talk with your host, Lori Williams. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.